My younger brother demanded half my business in mediation, but when I showed one document, the conference table, my business, 43 years of my life. The mediator's pen stopped moving, and for the first time in 6 months, I watched my brother's confident smile fade. That morning had started like any other court day. I had been in mediation for 3 weeks, listening to my younger brother, Marcus, argue why he deserved half of Morrison Custom Carpentry, the business I had built from scratch while he pursued his 3rd degree in Vancouver. Diane Chun, the mediator, seemed unusually sympathetic to his case. Too sympathetic. I'd find out why later, but let's go back to where this really began. Not 6 months ago when Marcus filed a lawsuit, not even 3 years ago when our father passed, but 43 years ago in 1982. I was 21, fresh out of my apprenticeship as a carpenter in Calgary, full of ambition but clueless about life. Dad worked at the oil refinery. Mom was a school secretary. We weren't poor, but we weren't wealthy either. Marcus was 14, already showing signs of what Mom called academically gifted and what I privately called allergic to hard work. One night after dinner, Dad pulled me aside. "David, your brother's going places, maybe university, maybe grad school. You know we can't afford to send you both." I nodded. School had never been my thing. "I know, Dad, but you've got good hands, talented with wood. Why don't you start something of your own?" He handed me $8,000, his savings, enough to buy tools, rent a small workshop, and survive for 6 months if I was careful. I took it and named the business Morrison Custom Carpentry. For the first 5 years, I worked 70-hour weeks, building kitchen cabinets, restoring furniture, creating custom built-ins for Calgary's booming developments. By the time Marcus finished high school, I had 3 employees. By the time he finished his first degree at UBC, I had 12 employees and my first commercial contract. By the time he completed his PhD in economics, Morrison Custom Carpentry was Calgary's premier custom carpentry business, employing 42 people with an annual revenue of $4.8 million. Meanwhile, Marcus became a professor, publishing papers about market efficiency and resource allocation, never once asking about my business, never visiting the workshop, never showing any interest in what I had built. Dad was proud of both of us, in different ways. My professor's son and my entrepreneur's son, he'd say at family dinners. But I noticed over the years that Dad's eyes lit up differently when Marcus succeeded. When Marcus published a paper, Dad kept a copy on his desk. When I won the Calgary Small Business Excellence Award in 2008, Dad simply said, "That's great, son," and went back to reading Marcus' latest article. I didn't complain. I understood. Marcus was a success story. I was just the guy who worked with his hands. Then Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2019. Dad cared for her until his heart gave out in March 2022. Marcus flew in from Edmonton for the funeral, stayed 4 days, and left. I was the one moving Mom into a memory care facility, visiting 3 times a week, paying the $6,200 monthly fee because her care needs exceeded what the public system could provide. Marcus contributed $500 a month. "Professor's salary," he said. "Not like you, big successful businessman." 6 months after Dad's funeral, Marcus called. "We need to talk about the business, David." I was driving home after a site visit. "What about it?" "The business Dad always said was for both of us. Family legacy." He told me dozens of times over the years. "Marcus, I built this business. Dad gave me $8,000 in 1982. That was his contribution. Everything else is 43 years of my life. Dad said it was a family business. Family includes me. You never worked a single day at Morrison Carpentry. Doesn't matter. Dad's promise matters. I've been patient. I let you run things. But now it's time to formalize the arrangement. 50-50 ownership, or I file a lawsuit." I pulled over into a Tim Hortons parking lot, stunned. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. You've had 43 years to build wealth. Dad wanted to balance things out. He said it multiple times. David, the business is for both my boys." Even if Dad had said that, it meant nothing legally. The business was registered in my name. 43 years of tax returns and official records prove that. But Marcus wasn't bluffing. 2 weeks later, a statement of claim arrived from a law firm in Edmonton. He was suing for half of Morrison Custom Carpentry and $600,000 in back compensation. 93 pages painting me as a manipulative older brother who had exploited Dad's favoritism and excluded Marcus from the family business. I read it 3 times, each reading making me feel sicker. The dates were real. Christmas 2015, Thanksgiving 2018, Dad's 70th birthday in 2019. But the conversations? I had no memory of them. I had been at those gatherings. Surely I would have heard if Dad had promised Marcus half my business. I hired Patricia Wong, one of Calgary's top litigation attorneys. "This is going to be expensive," she said after reading the claim. "He's asking for mandatory mediation first. If that fails, we go to trial. Can he win? Possibly. It's called promissory estoppel. If a judge believes your father made a clear, specific promise, Marcus could have a case. But the burden of proof is high." I thought about it. Dad had said the business was for my boys a few times, usually after a couple of beers at Christmas, talking about legacy and family. But never specific. Never Marcus, you own half. Just the vague sentimentality of an old man hoping his sons would get along. Maybe, just maybe, but I had 43 years of work, sweat, and blood behind me. And now, somehow, I had to fight to protect it. That's exactly what Marcus was counting on. The vagueness worked in his favor. He could claim Dad meant ownership, while I could claim Dad meant emotional legacy. It quickly became a classic, she said, except Dad wasn't here to clarify. "So what do we do?" I asked Patricia. "We go to mediation and hope we can settle something reasonable," she said. "If not, we prepare for trial. Start gathering every document you have, business records, incorporation papers, letters, or emails from your father, any witnesses who might have heard these alleged promises." I spent the next month combing through 43 years of documents. I found the original $8,000 check from Dad, dated October 1st, 1982. Letters he had sent me over the years, mostly birthday cards and Christmas notes, showed his pride in my work. One from 1995 read, "Proud of what you've built, son. You've created something special." Another from 2007 said, "Morrison Carpentry is a testament to your hard work and vision." None mentioned Marcus. None mentioned sharing ownership. I even tried speaking to Mom at her memory care facility, but she was having a bad day. "Who are you?" she asked. "Where's Harold?" Dad had been on her mind for 3 years. The first mediation session was scheduled for late November, almost a year after Dad's death. Diane Chun, a 60-year-old former judge specializing in family business disputes, was a mediator. She came highly recommended. The session took place in a bland conference room in a downtown Calgary office building. Marcus arrived with his lawyer, Richard Thorne, a sharp-dressed man from Edmonton. They sat across from me and Patricia, as though we were negotiating a corporate merger, not tearing a family apart. Diane began with a standard speech. "I'm here to facilitate a resolution that both parties can live with. This isn't a courtroom. I can't force anyone to do anything, but I can help you find common ground." Marcus spoke first, his voice calm and measured, like when he lectured economic students. "David, I don't want this to be adversarial. We're brothers. But Dad made a promise, and I need you to honor it. He told me many times the business was for both of us. He saw my academic career, saw that I wasn't making what you were, and wanted to balance things out. That was his wish." I stared at him. He looked sincere. That was the worst part. He genuinely believed it. "Marcus," I said, "I've been running Morrison Carpentry for 43 years. You've never worked there, never even visited the workshop. When did this promise supposedly happen?" "It wasn't a single conversation, David. It was years of conversations," he replied. "Christmas 2015, Thanksgiving 2018, Dad's 70th birthday in 2019. He spoke about the business as a family asset, and that both his sons should be taken care of. The specific times are my claim. I was at all those events," I said. "I don't remember Dad saying anything like that." You were busy with Jennifer's family or handling the kids. Marcus said, these were private, father-to-son conversations. Diane intervened. Let's focus on finding a solution. Marcus, what would a fair resolution look like? 50% ownership, formalized legally. I don't need to manage daily operations. David can remain CEO. But I want my stake recognized in 50% of the profits. Patricia spoke sharply. That's absurd. Morrison Carpentry generates roughly $800,000 in annual profit. You're asking for $400,000 a year for doing nothing. I'm asking for what Dad promised me. Marcus said calmly. I found my voice. Even if Dad said something like that, which I'm not conceding, wouldn't it make more sense to interpret as me helping you if you ever needed it, not literally giving you half the business? Marcus shook his head. Dad was specific. The business was for both of us. Not help Marcus. We were both owners. The session ended with no progress. Diane scheduled 2 more sessions over the next month. Between them, I couldn't sleep, lie awake at night, obsessing over the family gatherings Marcus had mentioned. Had Dad said something that could be interpreted as a promise? I tried to remember, but I'd been hosting, talking to guests, and yes, maybe had a few drinks. Jennifer noticed. You're not eating, not sleeping. This is killing you. If I lose this case, I said, I lose everything. The business is worth about $6 million. If Marcus gets half, I have to either buy him out for $3 million, which I don't have, or sell the business and split the money. Either way, Morrison Carpentry is finished. He wouldn't destroy the business, she said gently. But I don't think you know your brother anymore. The second mediation session was worse. Diane seemed sympathetic to Marcus, constantly citing family promises, moral obligations, and your father's wishes. David, she said, even if there's ambiguity in what your father said, don't you feel some obligation to honor his intent? He clearly wanted both his sons to benefit from the business. I felt my blood pressure rise. His intent was for me to build something to succeed, which I had done. I had helped Marcus over the years. His second degree. Mom's care cost beyond what he contributed. I had been a good brother. But you've never offered him any stake in the business, she continued. Because it's my business. I built it. Every contract, every employee, every crisis survived. That was me. Not Dad, not Marcus. Me. Diane looked disappointed. Family businesses often involve informal arrangements. Courts recognize that not everything must be written down. Sometimes a father's word is enough. That was when I realized she'd already made up her mind. She thought Marcus deserved something. Maybe not 50%, but something substantial. Patricia noticed too. After the session, she pulled me aside. I don't like this. Chin is showing bias. If she recommends a settlement and you reject it, that could look bad in court. Judges sometimes give weight to mediator recommendations. We need hard evidence, Patricia said. Something showing her father did not intend Marcus to have ownership, letters, documents, witnesses, anything. I spent another week digging. I found business loans from the 1980s and 1990s, all in my name. I found the original business registration from 1982 and decades of tax returns, all showing me as the sole owner. Then I found a letter from Dad dated 2010 in a box of old personal papers. Handwritten. David, I just wanted you to know how proud I am. Morrison Carpentry is proof that hard work and dedication pay off. You took my $8,000 and turned it into something remarkable. That's all you, son. Your vision, your sweat, your success. Keep building. Love, Dad. I read it 5 times. That's all you, son. Your vision, your sweat, your success. Not ours. Not Marcus. Just mine. I brought the letter to Patricia. She smiled. This is very good, David. It shows your father viewed the business as yours, not a family asset. The third mediation session was scheduled for December 15th, 2 weeks before Christmas, almost 2 years after Dad died. That morning, I sat in my truck holding Dad's letter, wondering if I should call Marcus one last time to reason with him. But what could I say? We'd said everything already. Inside the conference room, Marcus looked confident. His lawyer was reviewing documents. Diane Chun was setting up her laptop. Patricia placed Dad's letter on the table. "Before we begin," she said, "I'd like to introduce new evidence." She read Dad's words aloud. Marcus' face didn't change, but his lawyer whispered to him. Diane Chin frowned. "That's interesting, but it's from 2010. Marcus' claim involves statements from 2015 to 2019. Your father's views could have changed." "Certainly possible," Patricia replied, "but it establishes a pattern. Dad viewed Morrison Carpentry as David's business, your success, not a family asset." "One letter doesn't disprove years of verbal promises," Richard Thorne said. "Perhaps not," Patricia said, "but let's examine those promises." Marcus claimed specific statements on Christmas 2015, Thanksgiving 2018, and Dad's 70th birthday in March 2019. The medical records tell a different story. She handed over Dad's medical records. Harold Morrison was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's in November 2014. His notes indicate cognitive decline beginning in 2013. He had good days and bad days, repeated stories, confusion, difficulty recalling recent events, statements inconsistent with reality. The family was informed. Marcus stammered. "That doesn't—" Dad was still capable. I finally understood. The conversations Marcus claimed? Dad's memory was already failing. He had good intentions, yes, but he couldn't have made legally binding promises. The pieces fell into place. For the first time, I felt a surge of hope. Patricia pulled out more pages. "Thanksgiving 2018, she said. Harold Morrison had a medical emergency 3 weeks prior, a minor stroke. Hospital records showed temporary cognitive impairment. The doctor noted disorientation and confabulation. March 2019, Harold's 70th birthday. By this point, his Alzheimer's had progressed to a moderate stage. Dr. Chen's notes from February 2019 state, patients should not be making financial or legal decisions without family oversight. Cognitive function significantly impaired." Marcus went pale. I hadn't known. Dad seemed fine at those gatherings, talking, joking, remembering stories. Alzheimer's patients often seem fine in social situations, Patricia explained gently. They can mask symptoms, especially in the early stages. But the medical evidence is clear. Your father was not cognitively capable of making binding promises during the time period you describe. And even if he said something, a promise made by someone with documented cognitive impairment cannot form a basis of a legal claim. Diane Chin read the records, her expression changing. "I wasn't aware of this diagnosis. This significantly changes the analysis." Richard Thorne was speed reading through the documents. Even if Harold Morrison had cognitive issues, that doesn't automatically invalidate everything he said. If he made these promises before the diagnosis. His diagnosis was in 2014. Patricia cut in. The promises Marcus claims were made between 2015 and 2019, well after the diagnosis. And the letter I presented from 2010 shows that, before his illness, Harold explicitly viewed the business as David's alone. I looked at my brother. His confidence was gone. "Marcus," I said quietly, "did Dad really say those things, or did you hear what you wanted to hear?" He looked up, and for the first time in months, I saw my little brother, not my adversary. "He said it, David. I swear he did. Christmas 2015. Just the two of us in the kitchen." He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't worry, Marcus. The business is for both my boys. David knows it will be there for you." I remember it clearly. I took a deep breath. "But Dad had Alzheimer's, Marcus." He looked confused. Maybe he was thinking about the $8,000 he gave you and, in his confused mind, thought that meant the business belonged to both of us. Maybe he was trying to make me feel better about my professor's salary. But it wasn't a promise. It wasn't real. Marcus's eyes glistened. He said it every time I visited. Every Christmas. Every Thanksgiving. He pulled me aside and told me not to worry, that I'd be taken care of, that the business was ours. I thought it meant something. I reached out. It meant Dad loved you. But it wasn't a legal promise. It wasn't reality. Diane cleared her throat. Given this new medical evidence, I don't think mediation is likely to result in a settlement favorable to Marcus. If this goes to trial, a judge will almost certainly find that Harold Morrison lacked capacity to make binding promises during the relevant period. Richard Thorne was already packing his briefcase. We took a break. Patricia and I stepped into a coffee shop across the street. My hand was shaking as I ordered coffee. "Did you know about your father's diagnosis?" Patricia asked. "I knew," I admitted, "but I've been managing it for so long, it became normal. I didn't think about how it affected conversations from years ago. I assumed Marcus knew. He visited maybe 3 times a year. Maybe someone else told him. Or maybe he didn't want to remember, because it complicated his claim. I didn't want to believe that. I wanted to believe he genuinely misunderstood Dad's confused words and thought they were promises." Back in the conference room, Marcus looked smaller, deflated. Richard spoke first. "In light of the medical evidence, we're prepared to discuss a settlement. Marcus is no longer pursuing an ownership claim. However, we believe there's a moral obligation to acknowledge the family contribution to the business. We propose a one-time payment of $500,000 in recognition of Harold Morrison's initial investment and family legacy." Patricia scoffed. "You mean in recognition of Marcus' failed lawsuit? That's not happening." "David," Marcus said, ignoring the lawyers, "Dad gave you $8,000 in 1982. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $24,000 today. The business is worth $6 million. Doesn't that count for something? You wanted to pay you $500,000 because Dad gave me $8,000 43 years ago." I said, my voice rising. "Money I paid back 100 times over, helping you with school, covering Mom's care, staying here to handle everything our parents needed. I want recognition that this isn't just my success. Every business is built on family support, yes, but that doesn't mean you own my business." Diane tried to mediate. Perhaps a smaller amount, a gesture of family goodwill. I snapped, "No, not $500,000. Not $50,000. Not $5,000. This lawsuit has cost me over $80,000 in legal fees, countless sleepless nights, and nearly a year of my life. It's damaged my relationship with my brother, maybe permanently. And for what? Because Dad, in his confusion, said vague things that Marcus twisted into ownership claims." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. "You want to talk about family contribution? Let's talk numbers. From 2019 to 2025, Mom's memory care cost $446,400. I paid $400,000. You paid $36,000. That's money from my business and retirement savings while you visited twice a year. Your second master's degree, 1994 to 1996. I loaned you $18,000, and you repaid $5,000. 2008, when you couldn't make your mortgage, $12,000. 2015, car down payment, $6,000. 2020, when your salary was cut $1,500 per month for 8 months. That's over $450,000. I gave you over 30 years. Some as loans, some as gifts. Never asked for repayment, because that's what family does. But now you demand $500,000 because Dad's Alzheimer's made him say confused things about a business you never contributed to." The room went silent. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't remember all that. "Of course not," I said softly. "I never made you remember. I help because you're my brother, but apparently that means nothing to you." Richard Thorne stood. "I think we're done here. Marcus, we should discuss your options." "There are no options," Patricia said firmly. "If you proceed to trial, David will present medical evidence, business records, and documentation of decades of financial support. No judge in Alberta will rule in your favor. You'll lose and be responsible for his legal costs, currently $87,000 and climbing." Marcus stood slowly. I saw my little brother again, the 14-year-old looking up to me. "I'm sorry, David," he said. I don't know what I thought. I wanted Dad's words to be real. I wanted security beyond my professor pension. I wanted to matter in the family business. You could have just asked Marcus. I said, if you'd come to me and said, David, I'm struggling. Can you help? I would have. I always have. But you didn't ask. You demanded. He looked at his lawyer. Richard, withdraw the lawsuit. It's over. Marcus, I'd advise you to, Patricia said. It's over. He turned to me. I let Dad's confused ramblings become something they weren't. I convinced myself I deserve half of something I never built. I'm sorry, David. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know I'm sorry. He walked out. Richard gathered his papers and followed. Diane looked uncomfortable. I apologize, David. I should have investigated the family circumstances more thoroughly before forming initial impressions. I nodded. Patricia grinned. That's what we call complete victory. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like I just lost my brother. Jennifer was waiting when I got home. I told her everything. She held my hand silently for a long time. Are you okay? She finally asked. I don't know. I said, I won, but I feel like I lost something bigger. Your brother. My family. Dad's gone. Mom barely remembers me half the time. And now Marcus and I don't know if we can come back from this. He apologized, I said, but that apology was after his lawyer told him he couldn't win. That's not real remorse. That's accepting defeat. Jennifer squeezed my hand. People are complicated, David. Maybe Marcus misunderstood. Maybe Dad's Alzheimer's created this whole situation. Maybe your brother isn't a villain, just someone who made a mistake. I thought about it for days. Christmas came. Marcus didn't call. I didn't call him either. I sent a card, like I had every year since we were kids. He didn't respond. 3 weeks later, I got a letter, handwritten on Marcus's university letterhead. David, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I've been reflecting since mediation. I talked to my therapist and colleagues to understand what happened. I realized I created a narrative in my head from Dad's confused statements and convinced myself it was real. I wanted to feel like I mattered in your success. That was selfish and wrong. I should have celebrated what you built instead of claiming credit. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I'm in therapy, trying to understand why I did this, and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting that I hurt you. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. Your brother, Marcus. I read it 3 times. Showed it to Jennifer. What do you think? I asked. I think he means it, she said. He's horrified by what he did and trying to make amends. Is sorry enough? I don't know. That's up to you. I didn't call Marcus that day, or that week, but I kept the letter. 2 months later, in March 2025, the memory care facility called. Mom had passed away peacefully in her sleep. I called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. David, Mom died this morning. Silence. Then, I'll be there tomorrow. What do you need me to do? We planned the funeral together. Divided tasks. I handled the funeral home and service arrangements. He handled the obituary and contacted relatives. We were efficient professional like business partners. We didn't talk about the lawsuit. At the funeral, Marcus sat next to me. During the eulogy, he started crying. I put my hand on his shoulder, the way Dad used to do to both of us. After the service, we stood together by Mom's casket. I'm sorry, Marcus said. Not just for the lawsuit, for everything. For not being here more when Mom was sick. For not helping more with Dad. For being the son who left and expected you to handle everything. I don't want to talk about the lawsuit today, I said. I know, he whispered. I need you to know I regret it. I regret all of it. We buried Mom next to Dad at Queens Park Cemetery in Calgary, the same place where our grandparents, aunts, and uncles were laid to rest. Family land, Jennifer called it. A week later, Marcus called. Can we have coffee? Just talk. We met at a Tim Hortons, the same chain where I'd sat a year earlier, trying to process his lawsuit. We ordered coffee and sat across from each other in silence for a moment. I've been thinking about Dad's letter, Marcus said finally. The one from 2010. Your vision, your sweat, your success. That's what it said, right? Yeah, I nodded. He was right, Marcus said softly. It was all you, and I tried to take that away from you, because I was jealous. I stirred my coffee. Why were you jealous, Marcus? You had a good career, a good life. He sighed. I was the smart son, the educated one, the one who was supposed to do great things. But you built something real, something that employs people, that creates value, that will still exist when you're gone. I wrote papers that a dozen people read. You built Morrison Carpentry. Your papers mattered, I said quietly. You taught hundreds of students. It wasn't enough, he said. It was never enough. And when Dad started getting confused, saying things about the business being for both of us, I latched onto that. I built the story in my head, that I deserve half because Dad always wanted to balance things between us. It was delusional. Maybe not delusional, I said. Maybe just human. Marcus looked at me. Can we start over? Not forget what happened, but build something new? I don't want to lose my brother over this. I thought about Dad's fading memory, Marcus's lawsuit, the year of stress, and the $87,000 in legal fees. I thought about the 43 years I'd spent building this business, caring for our parents, being the one who stayed. I don't know if we can ever go back to what we were. I said honestly, that trust is broken, but maybe we can figure out what we can be now. That's all I'm asking, he said. We talked for 2 hours about Dad, Mom, our kids, the future. We didn't fix everything. Some wounds take a long time to heal. But it was a start. A month later, I did something I never thought I'd do. I called Marcus and made him an offer. I'm thinking about retirement. I told him, I'm 64. I've been doing this for 43 years. My knees hurt, and I want to travel with Jennifer while we still can. That makes sense, he said. I'm going to transition the business to my senior managers over the next 5 years. Sell them shares gradually. Let them buy me out. But before I do, I want to set up a scholarship fund at the University of Alberta. $100,000 to start for carpentry and trade students who want to start their own businesses. I'd like to name it the Harold Morrison Memorial Scholarship. Marcus was quiet for a moment. That's beautiful, David. I'd like you to help administer it, I said. You're the academic. You know how university scholarships work. It would be a way for both of us to honor Dad's memory together. I'd be honored, he said, then smiled faintly. Really? There's one condition, I said. What's that? You have to come to the workshop. See the business you once tried to take half of. Meet the people who work here. Understand what I built. I'd like that, he said. He came the following week. I gave him a full tour, the workshop where we built custom cabinets, the showroom where clients came to see our work, the offices where my managers planned projects. He met my employees, some of whom had been with me for 20 years. At the end of the tour, Marcus looked around and said quietly, I didn't understand. I really didn't. This isn't just a business. It's 43 years of relationships, of craftsmanship, of your life. It's what Dad's $8,000 became when someone actually put in the work. I'm sorry I tried to take it. I know you are. I said. We set up the Harold Morrison Memorial Scholarship that summer. The first recipient was a young woman from Grande Prairie who wanted to start a custom furniture business. At the award ceremony, Marcus and I stood together on stage. For the first time in 2 years, we looked like brothers again. Not the brothers we'd been before the lawsuit. Those brothers were gone. But maybe we were something better now. Two men who'd been through fire and come out scarred but still standing. Jennifer asked me once if I forgave Marcus. I thought about it for a long time before answering. I forgive him for being human, I said. For being jealous, for being weak, for making mistake. But I can't forget what he did. The year of stress, the betrayal, realizing that family loyalty has limits. I forgive him, but things will never be the same. Is that enough? She asked. It has to be, I said, because the alternative is losing him completely, and I don't want that either. Marcus and I talk every couple of weeks now. We have dinner once a month. We're working on the scholarship together. We visited Mom's grave on what would have been her 85th birthday. We're building something new, something different from before. But I still keep Dad's 2010 letter in my desk drawer. Your vision, your sweat, your success. On hard days, when the old anger resurfaces, I read it and remember, the business was mine. I built it. And no amount of revisionist history or confused promises can change that. Morrison Custom Carpentry will be sold to my managers in 2030. I'll retire, travel with Jennifer, spend time with my grandchildren. The business will continue under new leadership and new vision, and that feels right. Marcus will remain in my life, in whatever capacity we can manage. Not as close as before, but not lost either. Somewhere in between. Because that's what family really is in the end. Not perfection, not unconditional trust, not fairy tales. Just people doing their best, making mistakes, hurting each other, and still trying to find a way forward. Anyway, I'm 64 years old. I built a business, raised a family, and survived a lawsuit from my own brother. I've learned that documentation matters more than trust, that family promises should always be in writing, and that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. But I've also learned that people are complicated, that motivations are tangled, and that sometimes the villain in your story is just your confused little brother who made a terrible mistake. I don't know if that's wisdom or just exhaustion, but it's where I've landed. And for now, that's enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.